Nigeria at 52, well, yes, the speech was given by the president, and so much has been said about where we are, where we should be, how we should go about it. Well, Mr. George Etomi joins us now, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and former pioneer chairman, I should say, of the business section of the NBA. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's start with this background of sort. Charles Oruka did put it together. Let's take a look at it.
Independent Nigeria is 52 years old this year. It's a rather cruel irony that the CIA World Fact Book puts the life expectancy of the average Nigerian at 52 years. Indeed, it's been 52 years of mixed blessings. When the British Union Jack was lowered on October the 1st, 1960, it was with high hopes that the foundation fathers of the new sovereign nation hoisted the green and white flag. Within 6 years, the dream of a new African democracy had turned into ashes, set ablaze by ethnic and regional divisions and consumed by a bloody military coup d'etat. Within a year thereafter, the country witnessed another bloody coup and then exploded into a full-blown civil war. Nigeria would, however, emerge from the ashes of the war after 3 years into a period of relative stability that witnessed unprecedented prosperity occasioned by a global oil boom. In October 1979, the then military head of state, General Olusegun Obasanjo, handed the baton of power to a democratically elected government. Within 4 years, the democratic government led by Alhaji Shehu Shagari was toppled in another military coup. It marked the beginning of another 15 years of military rule. Democratic rule was finally restored in May 1999, and the man who handed over to the last civilian regime in 1979, Olusegun Obasanjo, returned as democratically elected president 20 years after. Since then, Nigeria has enjoyed its longest unbroken spell of democratic rule in 52 years of independence. The 13 years of democracy have been anything but smooth. The country has been beset with the challenges of militancy in the Niger Delta, sectarian violence in the north, and the monster of corruption, which appears to be getting even more formidable.
Corruption has become like a statecraft in Nigeria. The reason is this. If you have poor governance, the tendency of you trying to assist yourself, prepare for a rainy day, is most likely going to be there.
From the high hopes of independence, there's a growing sense of cynicism about the nation's leadership.
I always say this country is led and controlled by thieves. By thieves.
The education system is depressed, the youths increasingly frustrated, and in spite of economic gains on paper, the standard of living does not reflect the nation's income.
Our number is a strength to anybody in the world, economically, socially, anything. The fact that we have 160 million together somewhere, nobody in the world would want to toy with us. So it is left for us to recognize that and still see the fact that, this is our own strength and make use of it for the good of Nigeria.
As Nigeria marks 52 years of independence, the dampener on the celebrations may be the thousands rendered homeless, hungry, and desperate by the floods. In the face of a looming food and humanitarian crisis, what is needed is introspection and proactive remedial action. Charles Eruka, the Channels Television News.
All right, then. Well, there you have it. He started out by saying 52 years of mixed blessings. And in spite of all the enthusiasm by our founding fathers, those who have led the country up till now, citizens generally, it looks as though, we hear people say, and increasingly too, that the significance of the day is becoming an abstract. It's getting lost onto people.
Well, I wouldn't really blame anyone who finds himself confused by this obvious paradox that we find ourselves in. The potential to become easily one of the greatest nations in the world, plus the reality of the fact that we're still stuttering. But the message of the president, as I understand it, is notwithstanding this paradox, there's every reason to hope. And what he did in spelling out his reasons for hope are the achievements in spite of these difficulties. Now, let's admit it. I'm an incurable optimist, so let me come up front there with you because I don't have anywhere else to go. I grew up in a system that gave me the opportunity that I have today. I have absolutely no reason to turn my back on it. But I'll tell you something. Between the desire for us to achieve as much as we can in the shortest possible time and the reality of the system we operate a very delicate system where you're trying all the time to balance interests. And I think that's been the greatest drawback in the country. And we're not the only country that this has peculiarly happened to. If you go through the history of the United States, you had a history of those who were for the slave trade, who were against the slave trade, those who were pro-women. Women only started voting in the United States in our lifetime, as great as that nation is. You will always have those systems. And I think what the president is saying is, look, notwithstanding these difficulties, let's begin to emphasize the positives. And there are several positives. Let's even take the educational system that we're talking about. Yeah, generally, the educational system is having difficulties with the public sector education. But the private sector education is phenomenally very good. I don't know if the result, the failure of the public system is what's led to the private system, but if you go to the private schools, they're doing exceedingly well. And many of our children who are being produced from out of those schools are still excelling. Nigeria is still excelling worldwide. Now, what we need to do is how we must begin to marry the obviously proactive private sector with a public sector that's at times collapsing under its own weight. And this is going to be replicated in almost all sectors. Take the telecom sector, for example, which we all celebrate. The telecom sector is working today because of the private sector involvement. The private sector, I'm a believer in the private sector because most times you try to benchmark your standard with what works. You don't necessarily find that with the public sector. It's all about motion. The progress part of it is less emphasized. So what we must do is, and yet we're all Nigerians, whether we're in the private sector or in the public sector, what we must do is to marry these efforts because the same people, if you leave one sector for the other, they begin to excel. So what really is in the public sector that makes it so difficult for us to achieve? And those are the things I see the president is asking us to address. And so he reels out, in spite of all the challenges that we have, he tells you, look at the electioneering system. I think very few people will disagree today that we've made a huge improvement from what we knew it to be. What we need to do is to continuously build on it, build on institutions, make sure INEC gets even better with every election, make sure the courts get even bolder in upturning decisions. And I can tell you that many politicians will not willy-nilly decide that this election is in the bag. They all work harder, and we now see proper electioneering taking place. This always portends good for the overall system.